Hey, our next game in the closed Sicilian is from the Soviet Union versus United States match from 1946. We're going way back. With the white pieces was young Vasily Smyslov versus one of the American legends, Arnold Denker. Denker. That's probably how you're supposed to say that if you're in Germany. E4, C5. Closed Sicilian we are discussing here. Knight c6. Now we're discussing the bishop e3 line on move 6. And the previous two games, if you've been following the playlist, ended quickly. You're talking about 30 moves or less. So the miniature games. Here I want to show you how the games look when you go a little further along. And you can see some of the late middle game end game strategies. So here we got it. Bishop e3. Again, you see this attack here. And if you remember this Spassky, the first game in the playlist, the Spassky Hodgson game, you saw this exact same line. So here, bishop e3, knight d4. We already discussed it earlier in that game, and we showed that d6 was the correct move. And so obviously Spassky knew his Soviet games, right? Because he played the exact same. I don't want to use a strong word like refutation, but he played basically the same idea that Smyslov had played years earlier. So knight d4, knight ce2 with this idea of simply playing c3 here. So now d6, right? Protecting this pawn. And now c3 comes. Knight c6 and d4. And we can see how the move knight d4 is premature and black's plan has backfired. C takes, knight takes d4. Okay. Now the reason why, because again, you might be saying, well, why not this move right here? It's possible, but the reason why is Smyslov wants to keep the possibility open um, of using the d file. You see how this pawn is on d6? It's a possible weakness later on. It's going to be hard for black to get this in. So instead of just closing up the possibilities here, he keeps it open by capturing um, with the knight there. Knight takes d4. Knight takes d4, and now you understand the next move. Again, he doesn't capture with the pawn, right? Because in this line, yeah, there's a space advantage, but black's position is super solid. Okay, I'm not saying he can't, make something out of it as white, but this plan is more straightforward as far as you have a target already. You could just stick with that. E5. Okay, so now black is really rolling the dice here with this move because now, right, black's idea is to basically try to counterattack. First, he wants to control d4, of course, but then he's planning on the counterattack later with getting in d5 or even f5. So, if of course, if he's successful, it's fantastic, right? But remember, white has moves too, right? So you can't really reckon without the host. You have to um, consider your opponent's possibilities also. So here you have a clash of ideas. Smyslov is going to be, of course, trying to exploit the hole on d5, and Denker is going to try to show that it's just an illusion. Knight g e7, so you can already see the ideas in motion there. Knight e2, castles, right? Got a complete development, right? Bishop e6, so you see again all the forces building up for these pushes. Queen d2, again, basic principles, connect the rooks, right? Okay. But can you see the other idea behind this move? Remember, I told you black wants to play d5 or f5. Okay? The idea here is if d5, bishop f5, right? D takes, and then just simply queen takes, and then of course this knight is vulnerable here. Little subtleties in the position. So queen c7, and now rook f to c1. Again, white is mindful of d5. The idea here is if d5, then black will be black will be able to play c4 at one point. I'm sorry, not d5 right here, but it's to stop the idea of d5 by playing the move c4. Because of course right now if d5 you just play that, but the idea is to play c4 a la Maroczy bind variation. So rook fc1. Okay. So with that, with d5 being frustrated, again, now what do you do? Denker lashes out with f5. Right? Remember, I said he wanted to either play one of those moves. Right? The idea is to mobilize the center. So he lashes out with f5. He's frustrated, can't get d5 in. He goes with the other continuation. However, the problem with this move is that now this diagonal is open. Right? It's open for white's benefit for the most part. Okay. Now instead of f5, maybe just b5 because remember you gotta consider your opponent's ideas. I said he wanted to play c4, so why not try to shut that down? Okay. So black attempts to shut c4 down, but then a4, and now you can see the logical flow of ideas. Rook d1 with the double attack there. And after all is said and done, I'm not gonna go into all the lines, but after all is said and done, white still maintains that pressure and a slight advantage as a result. But b5 is definitely better and falls right in line with black's main ideas in the position. F5 is a little, um, little reckless. So there it is, c4. F takes e4. And knight c3. Okay. It's bad positionally to snatch this pawn after knight takes e4. So Denker plays knight f5. Knight takes e4. There goes the bishop. Okay. Queen takes e3. Some of you might be asking, well, why not take up this central post? Um, Problem with that is this is unstable. The knight is not really stabilized here. So after, for instance, c5, d5 is pretty much forced. Knight g5. Yeah, you have threats against this guy, and then indirectly this bishop here, and then f4, and you can see, the issues undermining this knight. So Denker keeps it simple. Queen takes e3, and now h6, preventing the knight from going there, and now rook d1, going after this pawn. Now rook f d8. Okay. And of course, it's dangerous to grab this. Rook AC1, right? Because now you have this pin. D5, of course, rook takes D5. And Queen F7, for example. And then you can just play this, attacking this, and this. And of course, the rook is protected. Usually, your instincts after a while should tell you not to make these type of moves anyway. But I just wanted to show you the variation. So again, Denker just ignores that. Rook AC1, rook AC8, B3. So now the issue is dead. B6, knight C3. So let's take stock in the position. Um, Smyslov has won the opening battle for D5. So we can see now that Smyslov is just totally ready to occupy the D5 square. Black really doesn't have any control over it. Um, another thing, another major feature in this position, and it's a common theme, and that's why I like to teach with just principles. Like again, we don't use engines, right? Put the engine aside. Is here you can see that this is probably the worst piece in the position is Black's G7 bishop. And so what that tells me is that, strategically, what that tells me is that what I would like to do is trade off this light square bishop. So this is Black's good bishop. Trade off this light square bishop, right? We could trade these bishops off, and then you go into this knight versus bishop. You go into a good knight versus bad bishop ending, right? That's what you want to do strategically, right off the bat. Like soon as I see these type of structures with this bishop being bad like that, I want to get rid of these two things, these light square bishops, and use my good knight against this bad bishop. Let's see what took place here. Queen E7. There it is, bishop D5. Notice there's the pin. This is all like Soviet chess, right? This accumulation of small advantages in the position. Queen takes E7. All right. So now pieces getting traded off. This backward pawn keeping keeping Black defensively minded. Now just rook D3, and notice just the build up. There's no rush. Rooks are gonna come. Remember, rooks belong in open files. Rook C7, rook CD1, rook F7, knight E4. Right, so we had the blockade ensuring that this bishop will stay bad. And what's good about blockading is that, it's instead of say, just occupying this square, is that besides preventing this move right here, when you blockade, the opponent can't even sacrifice the pawn. So it guarantees that even if it was going to be a pawn sack where he just gives up a pawn for activity, that's not even going to happen because of the blockade. So not only does he blockade the E pawn, which destroys his bishop, right? But he also attacks the D pawn. Okay, let's keep going. So knight E4, bishop F8, right? It's totally defensive. And now rook D5. Okay, what are we preparing to do? Just preparing to triple on the file now. Now you have all four pieces. This is one of the great classic games in the Cold Sicilian. You have all the pieces now just ready to pile up on the D file. Queen G4. And now you have rook 1 to D3. If he takes now, knight e6, then bishop takes d6, rook takes, and this is the idea. And then you have these two rooks versus queen. You have two rooks versus the queen here, and you get a lot of counterplay. They have to be careful when realizing an advantage. That's why there's that old chess saying, "Don't rush." So he removes the rook from uh, the attack on d1, and that's why it's very important to understand your opponent's ideas. When your opponent does a move, you want to understand what he's doing or she's doing, right? You want to look at that move and say, what is this move doing? Even if the move's not doing anything, you want to still acknowledge it and be like, okay, that's a crappy move. Like that move's not doing anything, or that move's threatening such and such. But nevertheless, you still want to acknowledge it. You never just want to just move on without understanding. Even if you make a bad move, you want to at the end of the game, you want to be able to look and say, well, I thought you were doing this and that. So okay, you might have had the idea wrong, but you still acknowledge the move. Always acknowledge the move. So 31, bishop e7. Okay, and now after this move to d3, this pawn is going to fall. So now knight takes d6, bishop takes d6, rook takes d6, and now rook df8, right? Down a pawn. Black does not want to trade or continue to trade off pieces. That's suicide. So he goes on the counterattack. Rook df8, queen takes e5, rook takes f2, and black's attack is a gimmicky one because the problem is his own king is exposed too. So white is gonna be there first. The rook goes back. Of course, the trades start coming, and this how to protect this forces black to be passive, and we'll just go over the end real quick. Rook g7, queen e8, g5, check. Just start chasing old boy around there. King f7, queen takes h6. Sorry, queen f5. More threats. Rook d1, queen c5 check, queen e7, and black's king is just too exposed. He's down material, but he's trying to hold on. He has that old American fighting spirit, right? That old World War II spirit. Queen f6, queen e8, queen f5, g4, rook f2, and black, of course, desperately would like to, get some type of draw, swindle, perpetual check. Queen e7, queen to d3, rook g5, rook e2, queen e4, and the end is coming. And just simply rook e6, and then finally Denker resigned. So I hope you enjoyed that game. That game is a great example of the full transition from the opening all the way to the ending in the 6 bishop e3 line of the Sicilian, and just shows you what it looks like, accumulating those small advantages. One thing you could take from here is, again, if you're black, this move, knight d4, is probably a bit premature. Instead, play d6 to defend that pawn. And from white's perspective, as we're looking at, we could see kind of the refutation of that move with this idea. But after you play d4, great idea is to keep this file open and pressure the d pawn instead of just stereotypically taking with the pawn. I hope you like that video. Please like and subscribe. And check my links down below for some more information on the Sicilian defense. And I'll see you on the next video.